It's 2020, and we can officially say that the cancer that is the Marxist intersectional ideology has officially metastasized in American culture. Now, this isn't necessarily a new thing. We have seen this creep going on for about the last 5 years, and it has only hyper accelerated in the age of Donald Trump. Not to put the blame on Donald Trump, of course, he is the one fighting against it. But for once, we have finally tried fighting the cancer, and the cancer has only fought back harder. Now, it's been a while since the media was overrun by this ideology, but it has been over the last year or so that the New York Times officially fell to this whole cultural Marxist, identitarian, ideological bent. And they are now trying to fuse this same sort of cancer into our armed forces. Now, think about what that means. In order to have a strong military, we need a military that is united and works as one. Imagine what this ideology is going to do if it spreads through our armed forces. There is absolutely no way that we are going to be able to hold our ground as a nation if the people defending our nation are at war with each other, which is what intersectionalism and identitarianism does 100% of the time. So we have this article from the New York Times here. The few, the proud, the white. The Marine Corps balks at promoting generals of color. You have to realize that people in the military are going to read this, and it's going to spark ideas in them. It's going to spread this ideology into the ranks of the military. And I believe that this article is aimed at doing just that. And we will no longer be able to defend our nation if they are successful in doing so. So, the byline here. A respected, combat-tested black colonel has been passed over 3 times for promotion to brigadier general. What does that say about the fate of the Corps? Honestly, it says absolutely nothing. Let's take a look at the numbers real quick. So we have this from the Cornell Law School, and it shows the number of officers. So here we have total number of commissioned officers, and then we have colonels. So let's go down to the Marine Corps, and say there are 10,000 officers, that means there are going to be 633 colonels. If there are 25,000 officers, that means there are going to be 787 colonels. So every single time that this person was up for consideration for a general role, they would have been competing with anywhere between 633 and 787 people. The fact that you got passed over 3 times does not mean that you have a race issue. It means that there is a very, very deep competitive pool for that promotion. And he did not earn it, or he did not receive it. He was passed over. But to assume that it has to do with race is absolutely beyond the pale. They are trying to stoke the flames of racial disharmony. They're trying to sow the seeds of distrust between the army or not only just the army, just the military, people who are lower rung on the military, and the leaders. So let's go back to this article here. All things being equal, Colonel Anthony Henderson has the military background that the Marine Corps says it prizes in a general. Multiple combat tours, leadership experience, and the respect of those he commanded and most who commanded him. I would assume that those qualities could be said about most of those colonels. That's how they reached the rank of colonel. Yet 3 times he has been passed over for brigadier general, a prominent 1-star rank that would put Colonel Henderson on path to the top tier of the Marine Corps leadership. Last year, the Navy Secretary, Richard V. Spencer, that's an unfortunate name, Richard Spencer, even added a handwritten recommendation to Colonel Henderson's candidacy. Eminently qualified Marine, we need now as BG. One thing of note. Henderson here is a Marine. That letter of recommendation came from the Navy Secretary. Now, I didn't serve in the armed forces. Unfortunately, I was kind of a little shit when I was younger. It is one of my regrets. I really do wish I had served in the armed forces, and I have nothing but respect for anybody that does. But from what I hear, and just, from what you see around, there is a lot of, I don't want to say, I mean, there's a lot of, it's not animosity because it's more friendly than that, but, each department of the military, they kind of jab at each other. They don't fully respect the others. They call the Air Force the chair force, things like that. So I'm not sure how much weight the Navy Secretary is really going to have with the Marines in terms of their letters of recommendation. And again, this person has been in a massive pool of people considered for the job. But never in its history has the Marine Corps had anyone other than a white man in its most senior leadership post. Who cares? Colonel Henderson is black. Again, who cares? Tony Henderson has done everything you could do in the Marines except get a hand salute from Jesus Christ himself, said Milton D. Whitfield Sr., a former Marine gunnery sergeant who served for 21 years. Again, you could probably say that about most of the colonels that were up for the job. Most of the colonels that are even, maybe even ones that weren't even considered at all, didn't even make it to the final round of consideration. They reached the level of colonel. So I don't think that they got there by sitting on their hands and being hated by everybody else and not being respected. That's what this doesn't take into account. It's looking solely at race, and it's making conjectures out of that. Proud and fierce in their identity, the Marines have a singular race problem that critics say is rooted in decades of resistance to change. You have to understand the military, there's a thing called military tradition. The military is very traditionalist, so of course it is slower to change. Now, I don't necessarily think that actually goes towards race, but the whole idea that it's rooted in a resistance to change and that coincides with any kind of racial animosity is a large leap. As the nation reels this summer from protests challenging centuries-long perceptions of race, hold on, let me fix that sentence for you. As the nation reels this summer from riots challenging, it's not even challenging centuries-long perception of race. It's not about race. The riots are not about race. It's about ideology. Pure and simple. And the author of this article knows that. In fact, we can see here that this whole section, the New York Times, has an entire section of race in America. That is only going to fan the flames of racial divisions in America. And they know that because that's what they want. They do not want a united states. They want a divided states because a divided states they can conquer. A divided people they can conquer. And now they're trying to do this in the military. That is the sole goal of this article, is to sow rancor among the ranks in the Marines. All right, so as the nation reels this summer from riots challenging centuries-long perceptions of race, the Marines, who have long cultivated a reputation as the United States' strongest fighting force, remain an institution where a handful of white men rule over 185,000 white, African American, Hispanic, and Asian men and women. It's kind of funny how everybody gets a capitalization except white people. And notice that? It took an act of Congress last year to get them to integrate by gender at the platoon level, said Representative Anthony G. Brown, Democrat of Maryland. Of course he's a Democrat, and a former Army helicopter pilot. And now they continue to hold on to that 1950s vision of who the Marines are. Again, there is a sense of traditionalism in the military because they are defending the traditions of our nation. And it took an act of Congress last year to integrate by gender at the platoon level. They shouldn't be integrated at the platoon level by gender. I mean, you have to think about this. You can't look at this from a social justice angle. You have to look at this from a practical angle. Women are not nearly as capable of doing some of the things that really strong military men can do. Women have physical limitations. So imagine your platoon partner is a woman and you get shot in the battlefield and you weigh 250 pounds and she's coming in at 130, soaking wet. Do you really think that she's going to be able to carry your ass to safety? No, she's not. There's a reason for all of this. But these people don't care about the facts. All they care about is just making us all the same. I mean, I swear, one day we're going to have our skins dyed gray at birth. We're gonna be genderless. They're gonna remove all of our personal organs, and we're just gonna be built in test tubes with gray skin and no hair, and we're all gonna look the same. We're all gonna look like the NPC meme. That's what they want. They don't want diversity. Current and former Marine Corps officials point to Colonel Henderson's personality as an explanation for why he's been passed over, including what they call his tendency to speak his mind, traits that have not disqualified white Marine colonels. Wow. Okay, so current and former Marine colonels, they point to his personality. So maybe, just because, so they say that, he speaks his mind. That is about the most vague term you could possibly use. If his mind is divisive, if his mind is very racially oriented, there's a reason why they wouldn't want that in their ranks. There might be, it depends what his mind is. So yeah, sure, some people, and I'm sure there have been plenty of white people who are disqualified for speaking their minds too, depending on what their minds are saying. So this is basically telling exactly why he's been passed over, and it's a legitimate reason. There are some people that speak their minds and it contributes positively to the organization. There are others who speak their minds and it detracts from the organization. It takes away from the cohesiveness of it. So that, you can't speak in these vagaries and then say that those are the specific reasons. Oh, well, it didn't disqualify white Marines. I'm sure it has disqualified plenty of white Marine colonels. Plenty of them. It's not that they speak their mind, it's the mind that they speak. Since the Marines first admitted African-American troops in 1942, the last military service to do so, only 25 have obtained the rank of general in any form. Not one has made it to a top 4-star rank, an honor the Marines have bestowed on 72 white men. So what? So what? Who knows what other contributing factors there are to that? 6 African Americans reached lieutenant general or 3 stars. The rest have received 1 or 2 stars, the majority in areas like logistics, aviation, and transport, areas from which the Marine Corps does not choose its senior leadership. Okay. Did they come up in the area of transport, aviation, and logistics? Is that where they went up through the ranks? See, they leave all this information out. They leave out pertinent information that they likely didn't even have were likely lazy and didn't even look into because they don't care. That's not the mission of this. The mission of this article is to sow racial divisions within our military. And they're using this guy Henderson, who apparently, for all of his glowing responses, has a bad attitude. That's what this is. He has a personality that is not fit for it. End of story. That should be the end of the article. Black colonel doesn't get promoted because his personality doesn't work. That's it. And we're gonna get to something else here in a minute that's actually going to signify that. So let's see. Out of 82 Marine generals overall today, there are 6 African American brigadier generals and 1 African American major general. Who cares? We don't care about the numbers and race. We just don't. I don't think there's anybody being held back by their race if they're the best person for the job. When you talk about the military, you're going to want the best leadership positions possible. So, I don't know what you can say to this. Charles F. Bolden Jr., who would go on to command 2 space shuttle missions before becoming the first African American to lead NASA, received only 2 stars in the Marines. So, they're basically trying to point out that the military here is racist and that you can't do well if you're black, despite the fact that he was a 2-star general, went to space twice, and then was given the position to lead NASA. Sounds like he had a real tough time getting ahead in our military, NASA, and government. Sounds like everybody overlooked him. No, they're using an absolute success story to try to paint a picture of racial discrimination. To make it to 4 stars, a candidate needs combat postings in his background. The pronoun his is at because no woman has made it to 4 stars in the Marines either. Yeah, there's a reason for that. Women aren't on the front lines the same way that men are, and also there aren't nearly as many women that are out there fighting the battles, and for good reason. They don't have the same physical capabilities. The strongest woman in the world is still not going to be able to do what military men can do. They just can't. Like, that has nothing to do with discrimination. You know, you got a problem with that, take it up with God. There's no one else to take that up with. Such a leader would have commanded troops in Iraq or Afghanistan, bearing responsibility for the lives of Marines who shed blood in poppy fields, mountain ranges, and desolate desert villages. The Marine Corps makes exceptions to this only combat arms rule when it gives 4 stars to aviators, including James F. Amos in 2008 and Gary L. Thomas in 2018. But they're white men. Like, they have to point out the race of everybody. Race doesn't matter. Okay? That's it. It doesn't matter. It is difficult for those outside of the armed services to understand the prestige that comes with becoming a 4-star general or admiral. 4-star officers sit in the Joint Chiefs of Staff, oversee an entire branch of the armed services, or serve as top officers of a regional command around the world. CENTCOM, for example, which supervises all American military operations in the Middle East. The commanders directly advise the Defense Secretary and the President. Okay? For 1 week beginning Wednesday, the Services Promotion Board will meet to consider its next group of generals. For the 4th time, Colonel Henderson is being deliberated. If he does not make it, the results won't be announced for months. His acquaintance say he is likely to leave the Marines. And that right there was what I was talking about we were going to come to. So, if this guy, out of a pool of 633 to 728 colonels, if he doesn't make it to general, he's going to pick up his ball and he's going to go home. That does not sound like a man who is there serving the country. That sounds like a man who is there serving himself. And he, excuse me, and he likely has espoused. Now, I'm just saying likely here, but he has likely espoused these racial division lines and blamed the fact that he has not been promoted on his race. And if he has done that, there's good reason why they passed him over. If he's been there and accused them of not promoting him because he's black, that is a perfect reason not to promote him. Because that is self-serving, and you don't need people with that sort of racial mentality in our military. Colonel Henderson declined to be interviewed for this article. Largely white leadership. Officially, I don't even know. Let's see, how long is this thing? Because we're not going to read this whole thing. But yeah, this is way too long. This would be an hour-long video if they had me, or if you guys had me read this whole thing. But this is all just about. Okay, so this is just more about he kept us alive. So okay, so that's Colonel Henderson. Whatever. Okay, so here, I remember when Charles Q. Brown Jr. was being sworn in. I actually watched it, and Donald Trump was very, very fawning over him as the Air Force Chief of Staff. This is just absolutely asinine, and we cannot have this racial identitarianism spreading in our military, and especially at the ranks of leadership. That is going to leave us very ill-prepared to defend ourselves if we have racial divisions running through our military. I mean, we've seen what it has done to our culture. We have seen how it has created dividing lines that have led to violence in the streets. We saw a Trump supporter executed, point blank, in Portland, hunted down. They called out, here's a couple of them, pull it out. And then he pulled out the gun and shot him in the chest, completely unprovoked. This ideology is a cancer that rots the mind. It absolutely destroys the ability for people to work together. It is the most divisive thing that this nation has ever faced. And they are trying. The New York Times is seeking to plant these seeds of racial divisions in our military. They know military personnel are going to read this, and they know that there's going to be some that find it as an excuse to blame race for why they are where they are within the military. The fact of the matter is we don't know why people get passed over or why certain people get promoted. We are not behind the scenes. This is all conjecture. But it's done so with an intent. Absolutely disgusting. And this stuff is dangerous. This stuff is extremely dangerous for the security of our nation. But we know that these intersectionalists, these ideologues at the New York Times and other places in the media, that is what they want. They want America to fall. They want America to be scrubbed and rebuilt in this socialist, communist utopia where they will still be among the elites and they will rule over all of us. Anyways, guys, that's the video. Please go ahead and hit the like button. Don't forget to share, subscribe to the channel. Also, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Parler at Ram Thorburn. Also, if you're interested in contributing to the channel, which would be greatly, greatly appreciated, please go ahead and check out my links to my Subscribestar, Patreon, and PayPal down in the description below. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.